Ever buy a barbell because it supported a good cause? I did. What's up everyone, Joe Gray here today to talk about the Primal Armor Appalachian Bar. This is a specialty bar that came onto the scene in 2023 from Primal Armor, which a lot of you may have not heard about. It's for good reason. He is relatively new to the actual home gym equipment scene, even though he has been running a successful podcast for multiple years and doing all kinds of cool stuff. So today we're going to take a look at this bar, talk about how it compares to some of the other offerings on the market in the same kind of realm. So it's a buffalo bar. Compare it to the rest of those. We'll talk about the pros and cons of this bar and ultimately discuss whether I'm happy about adding this to my home gym or not, to try and help you decide if you should add it to your home gym or not. The bow bar kind of is the evolution of a straight bar that bent during squats. You may have seen old pictures of Arnold and his training buddies squatting with an actual bent barbell. The idea was that the bar sat real nicely across the back, alleviated some of the tension on the shoulders from getting your arms way up, and it just was a really comfortable squat. That the weight tends to sit well. It does not roll off of your back because of how gravity and that all that stuff works. So this is the way to get a bent bar without bending your own bar solution. On top of a comfortable squat, this bar also provides some pretty unique bench opportunities. One, the bar, because of the way it's bowed out, gives some relief on the wrists a lot of times, but it also, because you'd be grabbing the bar here, this bow part provides an extra range of motion, so then that way instead of ending here, you might end here. For those of us who are especially raw benders, those of us who struggle off of the chest, this can be a very important piece to the puzzle to exaggerate that bar on the chest position and really force us to drive up. Extra range of motion can also translate into greater hypertrophy. So there's a lot of good things going on here. Obviously, I'm going to tell you that if you have shoulders that are aggravated or pec insertions or whatever it might be that get pissed off from normal benching, adding an extra range of motion might not be the right solution for you, so something to consider. As a specialty bar aficionado, I like to have one of each. I like to mix them up into my training at different times for different purposes. Even while using Juggernaut AI, this is one of the bars that Chad, who he himself has said is not a big specialty bar guy, uses and recommends for bench purposes.
I think a lot of the different bars and stuff are kind of silly. I got in trouble kind of at a Sorinex seminar once because I gave that same little spiel and I was like, you know, I'm in the business of teaching you how to get strong. I said, if I was trying to sell you equipment, of course I'd tell you, you know, 5 different bars and reverse height and everything.
So that, I think, fits pretty well in terms of how this plays into the development of a powerlifter. It's close enough to traditional bench and squat without changing it drastically, so you still get that specificity, but it's different enough that it mixes things up and introduces, again, that extra range of motion and all kinds of good stuff. Primal Armor obviously did not invent this. Neither did Kabuki. These types of bars have been around for a while from different offerings, but to Kabuki's credit, coming out with the Duffalo bar really was what kind of reignited the want for these bars to be in a lot of people's arsenal. For a while, I'd been looking at a Duffalo bar and some of the other offerings out there because, as you know, I've got a little bit of a Pokemon, gotta catch them all mindset when it comes to specialty bars. So not having this specific type of bar in my repertoire kind of gave me that itch that I needed to scratch. I connected with Jeff at Primal Armor in early 2023. He had plans to bring some bars to the market. He wanted to be a part of the garage gym competition because he had seen the cool stuff we were doing, donated to nonprofits and all kinds of good stuff. And one thing led to another. He became a sponsor of the GGC, and I ended up buying this bar with my own hard-earned money, and here we are today. When you're thinking about spending your hard-earned money on a bar, you want to know what are the specs, how does it work, how does it function, and maybe a couple of the pieces behind the scenes. Hopefully I can give you all of those today for this bar. Surprisingly enough, this bar, even though it comes in at significantly less than the Duffalo, is still made in the USA. The bar on the website claims to be 50 pounds. However, in testing from myself and reaching out to multiple of my buddies, Chip and Coach Carp, who both own these bars, they and myself clock in at just over 45. So it's like 45.6 or something like that. So I'm not sure if there's a misunderstanding between Jeff and the production, or it was a typo, or we got something different than anticipated, or whatever it might be. I prefer a 45-pound bar. 45 pounds is the standard, which makes plate math easier, but the website should probably be adjusted if that's an incorrect number. The bar has a 16.5-inch loadable sleeve, which should be more than enough space for the vast majority of lifters to fill up and use. Even with my deep dish plates, I can still fit more than enough plates to chase down some heavy 1RMs on squats. And of course, bench, unless if you are going for a world record bench, you've got plenty of room there. Speaking of the weight capacity, the website does not talk about that directly. It would be nice if maybe it clarified that, because some of these bars I've seen claim around 700 and others just north of 1,000. So that might be an additional piece to clarify just for the sake of having it. The bar is 87 inches in length. That is a very nice number because most of the power bars that we see on the market from Rogue, Texas Power Bars, even Kabuki, come in right at that 86.5, 87 inch length. So this bar is going to look, feel, and function on your back, in your arms, pretty close to a traditional power bar. For me, with a 2x3 rack sitting in normal J-cups, the bar works as intended. It does not roll out of place, get weird, etc. You're not having to use custom Duffalo block J-cups for your solution for this bar. And I reached out to my buddy Chip again, who owns this bar and has a Rogue Monster 3x3 rack, who he said that his is the same thing. Once you get up above about 185 pounds, there's enough weight to keep the bar from rotating and sitting in place, which means it stays where it is. So you're not gonna have that pendulum effect where you're constantly afraid of getting hit and whipped in the face with a bar. Over the 6 months that I've had this bar, I have not done anything besides load it up and lift it. I've done no maintenance, no oiling, no cleaning, no nothing. As you can see, it is in pretty fantastic condition. There is some slight oxidation throughout. If I was to take some 3-in-1 oil and a barbell rescue brush, for instance, this bar would look brand spanking new, just as it did coming out of the box. But for no maintenance in 6 months, in regular use, in a very, very wet winter here in Northern California, this bar is looking spiffy. Now, I do not declare myself to be a knurling nerd like some of you out there. Totally cool, by the way. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a, you get very excited about knurling. I just don't. That said, I have owned a raw steel, bare steel Texas Power Bar. I've owned my 1980s black oxide Avanco Power Bar. If you were to put these bars up against each other, this would be somewhere in between those two in terms of the kind of bite from the knurling as well as the stickiness from it as well. So the Avanco is not very aggressive or bitey. It does not tear up my hands or skin that much, but it is very good at kind of grabbing on and not going anywhere. whereas the Texas Power Bar was very, in my opinion, there. So this is somewhere in between those two. Loading it up heavy for squats, I still end up with the nice upper back tattoo from the barbell. So it is definitely present and lets itself be known, but it is not leaving me with a multiple day rash or issue or anything like that. I don't bench with it and end up with jacked up hands afterwards. So in my opinion, this is a good middle ground for knurling for what we are looking for. For deadlift bar, we might say we want a little bit more there. For squats and bench, we just need it to not move out of our hands, off of our back. This accomplishes that. An interesting part of this bar's construction is that it has no bushings or bearings. Most high-end or premium bars will come with one or the other. Even power bars where we're not really concerned about sleeve spin all that much, we kind of just want it to spin a little bit. Most will come with bushings of some kind. This does not. The end caps on the bar are plain, simple. They have the Primal Armor kind of logo going on. They've got the weight and the diameter of the shaft and all that good stuff. But the overall look and feel of them feels a little plain. Okay, so that's the specs and the construction of the bar. But let's take a closer look at what really matters, which is the performance. I mentioned that this bar has no bushings. Now, I've used bars that are Schedule 80 pipe, which means they're completely welded in place, meaning there's no spin at all the way up to very nice spinning sleeved bars. And in my experience, from a powerlifter perspective, there isn't that much of a difference. Would I want a little bit of spin? Would I want the bushings for the sake of a more finished look and feel, to remove the extra noise and play in the sleeves and all that stuff? Yes, definitely. Do I need them? Nah, not really. So from a performance stance, that's not a crucial piece. Again, I still want them. I've loaded the bar up with over 500 pounds for squats, and it seemed to be perfectly fine. I've loaded it up with more than that for simple testing purposes, and again, no issues. So even though the website does not claim a load capacity or weight capacity for this bar, my assumption and experience so far is that unless if you are a very strong squatter, this bar will handle whatever you have to throw at it. As I mentioned, the knurling is, in my opinion, more than aggressive enough to hold in place for squats and for bench. If you are someone that loves a very, very aggressive, bitey, just rip your skin off type aggressive knurl, this is not it. In my opinion, this is actually a better approach, again, for a squat and bench bar. I might take for a deadlift bar something that has a little bit more there, like my Texas deadlift bar, but in general, I have never felt like I missed a lift because the knurling wasn't what it needed to be, especially with this bar. One more big thing I want to bring up on this bar is that Jeff himself at Primal Armor is not making this bar. Now what I mean is that he is not in the shop constructing this bar out of steel that he acquired, bending it, putting it through a lathe to add on the knurling, assembling the sleeves, all that good stuff. He, like many others, has connected with another company in the United States that produces bars. He has potentially provided some specifications, details as to what he wants his bar to look like, feel like, and perform like, and then has purchased those bars from said manufacturer. Now, for some of you, you might be thinking, that's crazy. Why doesn't he make it like Rogue? Well, a lot of companies do this. Fringe Sport, Strength Co., myself even. I worked with my buddy at Wait It Out to bring to market the GGC Junior Bar. That bar is a bar for kids with a custom end cap design that I designed myself. We do not make that bar. It's produced by another company. We slap our end cap on the end, and when we sell one, they make one, they ship it out, they handle the whole thing. So Jeff has some type of process that he works with this company in terms of purchasing, producing, and selling bars that have his end cap made to his specifications. What that means is that this bar could potentially, or actually maybe already, has been produced and sold by another company. I talked to my buddy Coach Karp, who said that he believes this bar was also sold by Fringe Sport when they made a domestically produced Longhorn bar. This is probably the exact same bar. Now, Fringe no longer sells that bar. They sell their imported extra length bar, which is almost exactly like the Duffalo bar. So currently, I believe this is the only place to get this exact bar from Primal Armor, but I just want you to be aware that this isn't something that Jeff, he himself, created from scratch and produced with his own working hands. Again, no knock. Many companies do this, selling fantastic bars. It's just a piece to the puzzle that I think you should be aware of when you're spending your money on equipment. Okay, so we looked at all the specs and the build and the performance of this bar. Let's compare that to some of the other offerings on the market. So the Kabuki Duffalo is obviously the first one up to bat. The Duffalo is longer. It comes in additional finishes. It has bushings as well as a nicer end cap. So it is definitely the premium option of a barbell. Thus, it costs a solid $200 to $300 more than this. So if you're looking for the best on paper, that is most certainly the best bar. For a home gym user though, that bar is excessively long. So much so that you have to consider having custom Duffalo blocks inserted into your J-cups to be able to accept that bar. So keep that in mind if you own a home gym, which I assume you do if you're watching this, and want to use that bar in your power rack. It was very much so designed for a combo or monolift. Vulcan Strength, Fringe Sport, Strong Arm Sport, even Titan and a few others offer their own bars similar to this. What it's going to boil down to for you is really about probably budget and purpose. So the last piece to consider for the Primal Armor bar that I think is really what sold myself and others to purchase is this. One, Jeff is a member of the home gym community who lifts, participates in it. He goes to Home Gym Con. He runs a podcast to help people be better lifters and parents and all kinds of stuff. And he sponsors the Garage Gym competition, as I mentioned. And all of the proceeds from all of his activities, making equipment and everything, get donated to Huntington's Disease research. So Jeff is a fireman by trade. That's where he makes the majority of his actual money for him, his family, his kids, etc. All the money from Primal Armor then gets collected and donated to finding a cure for Huntington's disease. If you don't know anything about Huntington's disease, I'll put a link in the description so you can read a little bit more about it and the good things they are doing to help try and end that, find a cure, etc. So you, compared to, let's say, the Duffalo bar, get a made in America bar with quality construction, ready to perform, made for the home gym. It's cheaper, and anything you spend on it goes directly to a good cause. For me, that was the selling point to push me over the edge to buy this bar versus some of the cheaper options and the more expensive Duffalo. All right, so with that, are you buying the Primal Armor Appalachian Bar? Are you ponying up for the Duffalo bar? Are you going budget for one of the Titan bars or Fringe Sport or something else, the imported ones? Or are you skipping the Bow bar entirely? I'm gonna leave links in the description to a whole bunch of stuff. Reviews on the CB4 from my buddy Brandon Campbell, reviews on other Primal Armor bars from my buddy the Kurt Locker. I'll have the review on the Fringe Sport Longhorn bar from Coach Karp, and anything else I can find in that area that I think helps further the discussion here will be down in the description for your further edification. So make sure to check those out as well. Ultimately, I'm very happy that this bar entered my gym. For one, I get to check off the bow bar from my list of purchases. And two, this bar is, from a performance stance, everything you'd want. Like I said, I'd like it to have bushings. It might be cool if it had some cooler end caps, stuff like that. But overall, this bar is gonna do what it needs to on my back and in my hands just as well as any other bar on the market from any other manufacturer. And with that, if you liked the video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. If you want to see and vote on what I've got coming up next, make sure you hit the link in the description about my review pipeline. It'll give you details on all the reviews and content I'm working on and let you vote on what I do next. And I'll be back with more Huntingtons Disease for all of you very soon. Peace.